Hi, I'm Zachary Cowan, the author of the Study Daily Books, and thanks for joining me for a look and a study of Genesis 29 through 31. So last time we left off that Jacob had gone and he'd stopped at Bethel and he has made his endowment covenant. He has the rights of the Abrahamic promises, and now he's going forth looking for this capstone ordinance of finding an eternal companion. And so in the ancient world, there's two places you really go to find eternal companions. You go to family reunions and you go to the well. And soon family reunions won't be the issue because there's going to be large enough members of the church that they don't have to do that. And Jacob needs a lot of kids to help with that. So he goes to the well and there's a great big rock and he sees Rachel, which is his mother's brother's daughter, and he moves the rock and she's impressed and he kisses her and cries all on the first date. And that's kind of weird. She runs home, tells her dad, and he's a believer of, if you do it to my daughter, I can do it to you. He comes back and he also kisses Jacob. And then after staying there with Laban for a month, Laban says, all right, what are your wages going to be? And Jacob says, I love your daughter Rachel, I love your daughter Rachel. I want to marry her. I'll work for 7 years. And Laban says, might as well give her to you than any other man. So he works. And you get this great verse, right, where he says, these days were just a few. And this is Genesis 29:20. And like, because of the love he had for her, when it comes time to marry her, Laban pulls a fast one, puts Leah in the tent rather than Rachel. The next morning, Jacob wakes up, insert scream, and sees that he has become wedded to the wrong person. And Laban says, hey, in our culture, oldest daughter always gets married first, but if you work another 7 years, here in the next week, I'll give you Rachel as well. And he does that. And of course, there might be some mistrust in that marriage. Like, oh, you snuck into my tent pretending to be your sister and you're married. So maybe he doesn't like Leah so much. And instead, he really loves Rachel. And because of this, they get into this competition because Leah isn't loved as much as Rachel, and Rachel is loved more than her. And so you're going to have, at the end of chapter 29, all the way through 30, the great baby-making competition. All right, go ahead and check out this picture of Jacob's family. What you see here is that Rachel can't have children, and Leah, even though she may have had some trust issues there with Jacob, they quickly have 4 kids. There's Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah. And then Rachel, feeling left out, she goes ahead and gives her handmaid, Bilhah, and she becomes the 3rd wife of Jacob. And she has Dan and Naphtali born to her. And Rachel kind of considers those her children. Well, Leah sees this and she's like, oh no, you didn't. You're not getting ahead of me. She gives Zilpah to Jacob. And in Doctrine and Covenants 132, we learned that all of this was approved of the Lord. On very rare occasions, he approves plural marriage for increasing of children. So Gad and Asher are born to Zilpah. And then Leah gets pregnant again, and there's some potent flower things that are going on, but Issachar, Zebulun, and finally the only girl of the group, Dinah, is born. And so now we have 10 children, and Rachel is feeling really left out. Rachel is feeling forgotten and unknown. And so you have this great verse. In Genesis chapter 22, it says, God remembered Rachel. At some point in your life, you're going to feel forgotten and forsaken of God, and he will remember you. Well, after this, 14 years of service, Jacob has 4 wives, and he has got 11 children, 11 boys, and 1 daughter. He's got 12 children, and he says, Laban, it's time to go. And Laban says, no, everything works better on my homestead when you're here. Name your wage, and we'll take care of you. And so he and Laban come up with this whole wage thing, like he gets the big cows and Jacob gets the small cows that are speckled and spotted. And the Lord teaches him and says, okay, if you will set up some stalks in front of them that have speckled things on it, when the big, nice, firm cows, plain cows mate, then you're going to get more cattle. And after about 7 years, Jacob's got most of Laban's cattle, and Laban has changed his wages back and forth 10 times. And Laban's not very pleased with Jacob now. He's got all the children, he's got all the wives, he's got most of the cattle. And so the Lord says in chapter 31, it's time to leave. And Jacob approaches his wives. And in verse 16 of Genesis 31, they give the great counsel. Whatever God has commanded you to do, do that. So they pack up and they leave. And Laban finds out a few days later, chases them down. And then the Lord protects Jacob in a dream. In chapter 31, verse 24, the Lord says, don't say anything good or bad against Jacob. Just go at peace. And they have this whole encounter like, why are you leaving? He's like, I thought you hated me. And he's like, oh no, I just want to kiss my grandkids and my children goodbye and all of that stuff. But why'd you steal my idols? And unbeknownst to Jacob, Rachel stole his idols and hid them. Jacob says, go through our tents, and whoever you find them, you can kill them. And Rachel hides them in her camel seat. Her lord or her father Laban comes in, and he's like, oh, I need to search the tent. She's like, oh, just let me sit here. It's that time of the month. And he goes, no problem. And she totally steals his idols. And then Jacob and Laban do something really incredible because they've got some bad blood between them. They start in like verses 47, and they take rocks and they build this rock structure and they eat on it, this meal, saying like, okay, here's this heap. We're going to call it Gilead, this heap of witness. And in verse 51 and 52, the promise is, I will never pat Laban. He says, if I ever go see Jacob, I see this heap, it will remind me, I'm never going to go by this heap and to cause harm. And Jacob, same thing. We don't harm each other. Sometimes in family, we need physical reminders, heaps, not to harm each other on purpose. And there's probably somebody in your life that you need that with. Like the Jews had the reminder with the mezuzah that they would touch every day when they would come in and out of their house, that they have to love their neighbor as themselves and love other people. We need physical reminders and touch. Like Mr. Rogers, on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, come home, change his sweater, right, and take off his shoes as a reminder that the problems out there of the work world, I have to leave those out. And now I'm home, and I have to be totally devoted to those who are at the home and deal with them. And then when I go back on, I can pick up those problems. That's an essential thing. And there at the very end, you might think Laban's not a very good father and that he's kind of shrewd. And he is, but he can still bless his children. Because even though we're not perfect, a priesthood leader can still bless his children, even if he's a little bit of a scoundrel sometimes. He's not supposed to be. But even if you come from that kind of a home, you can be blessed. Hey, there's a quick rundown. And I hope you've seen some things and want to build some heap with things. And more than anything, like Jacob, when there are problems arise in your life and the rest of his family, you trust in the Lord. So trust in the Lord and watch how things work out. All right, we'll see you next time.